Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
Welcome. This is episode number 11, and I'm your host, Koji. And because of the self-quarantine, I'm spending a lot of time at home, and it's been an interesting month and a half or so with my son, and I'm really getting to know him. And not always great things, though. Sometimes they're not so great. But with this virus hanging over our heads, I think this podcast is even more valid because, you never know. You might get sick. You might die.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not, Koji.
Let's not hope not. So this is my record for him to be able to hear my advice and get my friend's advice as well. But as you can see today, I brought on my friend from a long time ago, Mr. Sean Lawrence. We went to a middle school at Flint Ridge Prep, which I hated the school. No offense to Flint Ridge, but my least favorite place I've ever been at.
It's on my list.
He was absolutely probably one of the best people back in the day, and I remember having really, really great times. I remember communications class. Were you in communications?
Communications class.
Oh, you don't remember? That was like my favorite thing, dude. We had so much fun in that class.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It took me a second. Yeah, I'm getting old.
The one thing I remember from that class, Sean, was that she said, the teacher said, it's unattractive to be homophobic. And at the time, we thought it was like the funniest shit in the world. But
yes.
In reality, it's true, right?
Right.
But
back in those days, it was kind of a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. But welcome, Sean. Say hi. How are you?
Hi. How's it going, everybody? Or whoever I'm talking to.
Sean,
is this for your son? Or
No. So this is a podcast. Right?
Okay.
But ultimately, I'm making this for my son so he could hear lessons. But it comes out regularly to people, so other people are hearing it. But ultimately, it's for my son.
Yes.
So, Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, as he mentioned, I went to middle school with him. I've kind of been here, there, around the world, and back again. I made my share of mistakes, so I think in my opinion, I'm a good person for advice because I have a philosophy that you can learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. So, I had kids, and then I went back and tried to go to school. And I ended up being a single father, taking care of 2 daughters and going to college. And anyway, now I finally got my stuff back together again. But the good thing is I've got a lot of world experience from, just various perspectives from all around the world. And, hopefully I have some stuff to add that you'll like. I'm a teacher candidate right now, so I'm actually about to be a history teacher, what they call now social sciences teacher. And I was a banker. I was in banking and finance. So yeah, I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I think I have, a pretty diverse perspectives to add to.
Yeah, and we'd love to have you on other episodes for future other stuff as well.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you.
So I had a hard time trying to figure out what would be the best for us to talk about. I know we went back and forth for a while, and we kind of decided around alcohol, which I went right when you said it. That was the one I knew, and because alcohol. I went to UC Santa Barbara, so drinking in me was like, I was like, I drank all the time, so I have a lot of advice around it. So why don't you get us started, Sean? Why don't you tell me the first advice around alcohol that you have?
Okay, well, I'll start by saying alcoholism is bad, but I am a person who believes in keeping it real, so I'm not going to sit here and talk against alcohol either. So in pretty much every culture around the world, except for this tiny little place in the Middle East, alcohol is just going to be part of the culture. And to your son and to whoever else I'm giving advice to, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that if you don't drink at all, cool people aren't going to fully accept you. But
that's hilarious.
But the key is moderation, right? So I have 2 very different experiences in terms of cultural perspectives on that because my mom's from Europe, so I did spend part of my childhood and many summers in Germany, and I also have the high school experience of the United States, and it's very different, and you see very different results. So here it's this big taboo. You got to be 21 to drink. And in high school, people are going to drink anyway. But when they do, you have kids leading kids and nobody knows what they're doing. and they just get wasted, they get trashed, and next thing they're throwing up, this, that, and that. Whereas in Germany, for beer and wine, you have to be 16 to drink, and for hard liquor, 18. So you go to a high school dance in Germany, you're actually drinking beer and wine, or one or the other. They say, there's a saying in German, beer and wine is not good, basically, is how it translates. But so you'll be drinking with your classmates, and then your teacher will kind of cut you off, like if you're drinking too much. Whereas here, you go to party, everyone's like, chug, 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 cut the little thing and get wasted, whatever. So ultimately, I think the key to alcohol is you're gonna have to accept that it's out there, but the key is moderation.
Moderation. I like
the key is really moderation. I had an interesting experience actually here in Pasadena, California. I went to my driver's ed class at there's a Sears right there, and the teacher, I guess she was kind of a they called her a loadie, but yeah, she the first day she didn't even talk about driving. The first thing she told us was she started giving us drinking advice. And her advice was to eat greasy food before you drink.
Yeah.
Now, I've actually learned, because there's this evil thing to you who is learning about these things called a hangover. But there are actually several ways to avoid a hangover. One of them is, so greasy food will like coat your stomach before you drink, right? Eating food will keep you from getting the stomach issues, and then hydration is the reason, dehydration is the reason you get headaches if you drink too much. So I hate to use the term wise drinker, but a wise drinker will hydrate and drink water in between.
Yeah.
And then you'll wake up feeling fine.
So it sounds like I heard two pieces of advice there. One was drink in moderation. Yes. And one was to eat greasy food and drink water while you're drinking. Prevent the hangover.
Yeah, I mean, the greasy food thing, that's kind of like a trick. Like if because like in certain situations, and I know you've been around too, like in certain cultures, and I know in some parts of Asia, like if you want to do business, for example, you kind of have to drink with the people first before they'll even like talk to you. If you're going to have to kind of drink a bit, if you eat the greasy food in advance, it kind of just coats your stomach.
Yeah.
Right. So if for example, like in Germany, they'll eat things like pretzels and bread, things like that will absorb the alcohol, and it'll kind of just like mellow it out a bit. So drinking on an empty stomach is a big no-no, and not hydrating is a big no-no. You're gonna wake up in the middle of the night, big old headache, wanting to throw up, things like that.
Exactly. So let me tell you my first piece of advice then. Okay, after your freshman year in college, you got to be able to get yourself home.
Absolutely.
Because in the freshman year, I think it's fine if you're so drunk that your friends have to carry you or something, or get you or drag you or something. But after your freshman year in college, you got to be able to get yourself home. So you got to know your limit, and you got to be able to get yourself home. I think that it's pathetic when I see my friends or anybody be like so wasted, and they're an adult, and you're just like, dude, you got to get yourself home. You got to one way or another. And nowadays with Lyft and Uber and all that stuff, it's so much easier to get home too.
Yes.
Because back in the day, we had to drink, and sometimes you had to drive, or you had to take a taxi, or you had to do something. But nowadays, it's much, much easier. So I think that you have to just understand your limit and know know how much is too much, and get to that point, not to go over that point. Unless you're home. If you're home, then go crazy if you want to. But if you're out. Yeah, but if you're out and
walk,
about,
bump into the cabinets in your kitchen,
that's
you're not
your own
going to
stuff.
kill anyone.
Yeah, you're not going to kill anyone. But also, just I one of the things I used to do in college was I used to walk around. Me and my friends would walk around at night, and we'd look for people who were so drunk they were passing on the road, and we'd get them home. And we'd be
okay.
Especially girls, we'd be like, "Hey, dude, get up! Where do you live? Where do you live? It's not okay for you to be passed out on the side of the road here."
Yeah.
And so, just because there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to be trying to get you home,
right?
So I think that's my number one piece of advice always that's my number one rule is actually that you got to be able to get yourself home after your first freshman year, and because that freshman year is the time you learn your limit. I think you start to learn okay, this is how it doesn't have to be freshman year, it could be any time really, but you got to learn your limit, and then once you learn your limit, you got to be able to modulate yourself until you get to that limit.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, the whole driving thing, getting a taxi might sound kind of easy or whatnot, but it was pretty difficult back in the days, and it was very expensive. Now, with like you mentioned, with the driving services they have online, I mean, there's really no excuse to
Yeah.
drive drunk. And in certain parts of LA, they actually have also to this it's, well, I don't know how accessible this is to everyone, but they have this like Korean taxi service where two guys will come out. One will drive your car. Like if you went somewhere you weren't expecting to drink, one will drive your car home, and the other one you drive with him home. But yeah, but
That's awesome.
drinking and driving, yeah, that's definitely a big no-no, and there's a lot of bad things that can happen with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, you make a very good point. And if your
And then,
friends tell you, hey, and they try to take your keys, and you're like, I'm not drunk.
yeah,
Sometimes you can't tell how drunk you're. If people are telling you like, hey, you need to stop,
you're probably drunk.
then yeah, there's probably a reason they're telling you
Yeah.
that.
All right. Well, let me give you my second piece of advice. My second one, I assume my son's heterosexual, but you never know. But make sure to see the girl sober, right? Don't girls always look better, or people always look better when you're drunk, right? So make sure that
Regardless.
when you're sober and it's
Yeah.
daylight, that you see her again, right? That you make sure that that person is who you thought they looked like and who they were. And I think that's really, really important because, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of situations where I woke up and I was like, oh, dude, she was so cute. And then I was like, later, I was like, oh my God, like,
Yeah,
what was I
alcohol.
thinking? Right.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and that goes for definitely for women and for other things too. It goes for nowadays with social media. You'll be posting something thinking, "Oh, you're so funny, you're so badass." In the morning, like you're getting all these messages like, you're a jerk, this and that. And that. But yeah, I almost think cell phones should have a breathalyzer on them nowadays. To like kind of keep you from those uncomfortable situations
Yeah.
or drunk texts, drunk calls. But
Although
yeah,
there are texts, I think there are apps where it prevents you from texting or without, like, you have to do like a math equation or something. So it's like that,
oh,
that barrier from like sending email or sending a text to somebody.
nice.
Because I think that's
No.
probably good, just to be like, hey, like, probably not a good idea to text.
Nice. You need to send me that after this podcast. But yeah, no, he's absolutely true. And the light factor too, because usually it's dark by the time you're kind of, so you're already like everything seems like nicer and cooler than it really is, and then it's dark, and then yeah, you don't want to wake up and be like, oh,
Yeah, what happened?
yeah, and then other things can happen too. Like sometimes, you might not use protection
Oh
because you
yeah.
were drunk, or someone might offer you some illegal substances, and you're thinking, oh, so you kind of have to have this preconceived idea in your head that what your limits are. Kind of like when you go to a casino, just hide a certain amount of money so that no matter what happens, you only spend this amount of money. Because alcohol, and that's why they give you those free drinks in casinos,
Yeah.
because they want you to just keep So it
Exactly.
does impair your judgment, absolutely, and it you definitely don't want to be alone. I mean, that's bad to be drinking alone anyway, but but it helps to have friends with you that can be like, hey, and just kind of like stop you from some of those uncomfortable
Yeah,
situations.
maybe you don't want to mac on that girl because
Yeah, because she might not be a girl, or she might not
or
be as good as you think, or
or there might
yeah,
be a boyfriend right around the corner, which you don't
yeah,
want to
or
be dealing with.
STD, STI,
STD,
whatever they
yeah.
call it now.
Well, I'd love to hear your next piece of advice. Do you have another piece of advice for me?
Yeah, so let's see. In terms of alcohol doesn't equal alcohol, doesn't equal alcohol. There's for example, well drinks. Anything they call well drink, if they can't tell you what it is, they're like, oh wow, I got a $1 margarita, it's this big. Probably that's gonna lead to a headache or something like that. Also, sugary things, when they mix it, when it gets too sugary mixed with the alcohol, that's gonna give you a headache, things like that. Like for tequila, for example, because I went on a tour of Tequila Mexico, and I kind of learned the difference. A lot of them are using sugar cane now, like Jose Cuervo's garbage. Don't touch that stuff. It has to be 100% blue agave, and then you can actually drink it, feel good the next morning. Usually, for the most part, if an alcohol is too cheap, stay away from it. I know, like, especially in college, you're on a budget, things like that and that. But yeah, like, well vodka, well whiskey, well, anything just means like it's almost like saying cesspool or like sewer. You know what I mean?
I
They
love
might
that.
as well just put a bucket into the sewer and just pull out some garbage.
I love that all
You
your
also don't want
advice.
to go ahead.
I love that all your advice is about not getting a hangover.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, you said we're going to talk about alcohol because
Yeah,
I'm not going
yeah,
to lie. I'm not going to say, oh, don't drink it all because it's going to happen. It's going to happen if you, and that's the problem too. Like the parents that are too strict or the adults that are too strict to say, don't drink it all. You can be like, my dad's a lame-o or whatever, and just do it anyway.
yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I mean, the message is yes, you're going to drink. So why not do it with some experienced advice,
Yeah.
like I said, learn from other people's mistakes. It took me years to kind of like get this fine-tuned, but
Yeah.
yeah. So forgive me if I seem a little pro alcohol, but
No, no,
I'm
no.
just
No,
I want to keep it realistic.
I agree with you. I think the people that were super, super strict, those are the people that are craziest in college or whatever later, where they're like, those are the
Yeah,
ones that go buck wild because they're so repressed when now they're not with their parents and all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to drink like a gallon of shit, but
exactly.
I never thought of I mean, I never drink, I drink beer, so I don't really drink well drinks, but
Yeah.
really interesting to know that. And good note. Third one for me is, don't be a wine snob and don't drink wine at a bar or club ever. Uh, as a
Well, I
guy,
lived in the
sorry.
Temecula area for a while, and
Yeah.
that's wine country. Um,
Because I mean,
Wine, I've tried.
what you, sorry. Well, if you were at a bar or club, would you drink wine? That's what I
No,
mean.
and I don't want to
You don't want to be that
violate
guy,
the
right?
I don't want to violate the communications class philosophy either and say, oh, that's gay or whatever. But
No,
like,
it's not. It's not being
I
gay.
think it's snobby more than
That's
anything.
what I mean.
And
It's like, come on, dude. I'd rather just
I mean,
drink soda.
if you go to wine country, you go to Napa Valley, you go to Temecula. Okay, yeah, you're in
Yeah,
wineries. That's to me, that's the place. It's
yeah,
kind of like you don't wear flip flops and shorts to a fancy restaurant.
yeah.
You don't go to a club like, oh, let me smell the nose on this wine and then swish it in your mouth and all that. I mean, I think there's a time and place for everything, but yeah,
Yeah. I think it's pretentious and just annoying. I'm just like,
yeah. And then they're going to give you crappy wine anyway in a
yeah.
club and overcharge. And, wine too, if you have crappy wine, it's going to give you a headache too. Again, drinking
it's
advice,
it's
but
it's a good wine. Yeah, no,
but
that's
no,
it.
yeah, I agree with you, Coach. I think that's
I mean, I love wine. I drink wine, and I like good wine, obviously. But like, it's I think being a snob of anything is annoying, but especially wine snobs who are like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I can't really tell the difference between like different expand like on around the same level. It all kind of tastes the
yeah,
same at the end of the day to me. I know
yeah.
that sounds,
It takes years to really do, and they're holding the stem because they don't
yeah,
want to get their body temperature on the thing. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy,
no,
or girl or whoever's
yeah.
listening. Yeah,
Well, actually, that reminds me of like even on Corona, you don't want to hold the bottle part of it because it gets it warm. Or any bottle,
yeah.
right? If you hold the bottle, it gets a beer warm. You want to hold the top. So just that's another piece of advice, I guess.
It is. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it just looks weirder when you're doing a wine glass, though, right? Because it's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I mean the really really big snobs will hold the base because they won't even hold the stem, and it's just like, okay, if you're in France or if you're in some like winery, cool, but
Yeah.
when in Rome, do as the Romans. Like in a club, that's not really the place. Let's just be real about
Yeah,
it.
let's be real about it. I mean, yeah. So go ahead. Let me hear. Do you have another piece of advice?
Another piece of advice: see, alcohol. We talked about beer goggles and women. We talked about
I'll
driving.
share you. I'll share one right now. Then,
Yeah.
don't drink when you're emotional. So if you're sad or angry, not a good
Yes.
time to drink. You should try to drink when you're happy or when you're celebrating or when you're trying to have fun, but not because you're sad or emotional or angry. That's like the worst time because I think I mean, it leads to a lot of bad habits, but also just leads to a lot of bad things down the road, right?
It does, yes. And again, I won't claim to be an angel or a saint, but yeah, I mean a lot of fights and things like that very easily happen on alcohol. Um whatever you're feeling, and this goes for alcohol and it goes for other things you
Drugs.
might experiment with as well. Hopefully not, but whatever kind of vibe you're on will just kind of using math, it'll just magnify what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And alcohol is naturally a depressant, so it might feel good for a moment, but yeah, being in the wrong frame of mind when you get quote unquote wasted can definitely be a disaster.
Yeah.
I thought
I
of some
think,
more advice if you want me to add
yeah,
it.
I'd love to hear your advice.
So my uncle my uncle Dieter, so he's a little out there, but his rule is never drink before 10 a.m. or you're alcoholic. So once and his family's into like nudist colonies and stuff, but we were at this place in Europe, and like he ordered the beers at like 9:50. We had to sit there and like stare at it for 10 minutes before we could touch it. Now there's certain exceptions that are going to happen. Okay, some people say 5 p.m. That's probably more human, but Las Vegas is an exception. Day and night is just blurry. Airports, because you're traveling and there's time zones, things like that, and also there's anxiety and things like that that could be combated. So you have to know your exceptions, and those are like the only times it's okay to like drink in the morning or something like that. Maybe podcasts, or maybe when you're like you have a bowling tournament, things like
You have
that.
a bowling tournament.
For the most part, as much as you can, don't like drink alone. I mean, if you're in
No.
quarantine, that's kind of different, but like let's see what
Actually,
else.
that's funny that you said that, because one of my pieces of advice is signs you have a problem, and one of them is that you're drinking alone. But other ones are you'd rather drink than go out hang out with your friends or your girl.
Yeah.
If somebody says you have a problem, you probably have a problem.
Yep.
And the third one is if you're drinking in the shower or jacuzzi or something just to get drunk because you can't afford it or you want to drink more. I have friends that done that.
Did you say drinking in the shower?
Yeah, because like it's the hot water. Like,
Hold on, let me get my bucket list.
No,
Just kidding.
no,
I never even thought of drinking.
well, because it's like drinking in a jacuzzi, right? The jacuzzi gets you more drunk, right?
Oh, yes.
Because it's like the hot water in the body, and it just goes in your body quicker. So it's like if you're doing that just to get drunk, then you have a problem. But yeah, I think drinking alone is,
unless you're like Scarface, and then the whole like or Biff from Back to the Future, and
that's hilarious.
I'm not sure how deeply I should go into that one, but yeah,
No.
if you're all alone in the jacuzzi, like, hey,
Yeah,
that's definitely bad.
I think it's drinking like in excess. I mean, I think it's okay to drink wine by yourself or like a beer, like at dinner.
Yeah.
But I think it's like if you're drinking a lot, if you find yourself drinking like a 6-pack by yourself, that's a problem.
Oh, I should probably mention this. If you go to Japan, don't accidentally take advantage of the sushi guys. See, because I went to Japan and I found out that they can't say no to the if you buy them a drink or whatever. So my last day in Tokyo, I'll admit I probably had a few too many, but so I would give beer or sake shots to the sushi guys. And forgive me, I don't really speak Japanese, but they'll be like, pero sanparaga sake no sanparaga kanpai, and they all have to drink it. And then by like the 8th or 9th one, I figured, ooh, you know what? I might be making these guys like slice their finger off or something. So I better stop. So yeah, don't take advantage of people who aren't allowed to say no. That's number 8, I guess, or
that's
9,
number 8.
whatever number we're on. Forgive me, I didn't write anything down. I didn't think about that, but
It's
I'm
okay.
just kind of going off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, that's all my pieces of advice. Do you have any other pieces of advice around alcohol?
Let's see. Alcohol. Don't drink crappy alcohol. Don't drive. Make sure your beer goggles are just beer goggles. Just make sure to take care of your friends too, and have friends it helps to have that one friend that doesn't drink.
Yeah.
So that you don't have the designated drunk driver, because I've had the designated drunk driver that the mirror comes off, or oops, you do a hit and run, or oops, you just busted somebody's mailbox.
Yeah.
Like, it helps to have that one friend that's like a Jehovah's Witness or something, or like find some kind of friend that for whatever reason, whether it's religious or health, that they can't drink, because that person, having them along, well, sometimes they could be a drag, but they're gonna get you out of a lot of bad situations. And
especially when you're young. I think as you get older, I don't think that's as necessary. But when you're young, in
yeah,
college
when
and
you're
high school,
40, you
yeah,
should have
you
it
should.
all figured out. If not, then
Yeah, because it's kind of like drugs. I mean, in most drugs, you want somebody who's not on the drug to be around, just in case before you. Like that's a general rule for any kind of drug, right? Like you want to make sure that there's somebody there who could think, right? Who's
yeah, to tell you that, like, no, because I mean, I don't want to tell like sad stories or anything, but like, I do have a friend whose uncle back in the whatever it was 70s or 80s or whatever, he thought he could jump off the pier into the sand. He was on LSD, and he's in one of those like wheelchairs now. And then alcohol too, actually I just thought of something too. So my friend Emmanuel, his nephew was all over the news at UC Irvine, I think it was. He was one of those kids that wasn't allowed to drink. His family's, like fundamentalist Christian, whatnot. So he went to college, 18 years old. He died at like some frat party or something, because they're doing like they give him like a beer bong, whatever, and they pour hard liquor down it, and he died. It was pretty tragic. And that's the thing too. Like, so like people have complete taboos about alcohol and whatnot, and then their kids go to college, like you mentioned, the ones whose parents are really strict. They go there not knowing what they're doing, and they're just like, yay, freedom. And I say another advice is, I'm sorry if I'm kind of jumping around, but like college in general, if you're inexperienced, it sounds like your dad will probably lead you in the right way, but you have to be very careful about a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that don't know what they're doing, that are like, yeah, alcohol, and like, here, let's chug a fifth. You actually can get sick and die, so just know what you're getting into before you get into it.
I think that one of the things from this conversation that's been interesting is just the importance of having good friends around, that you guys are both watching each other's backs and making sure, I think that, like, I didn't even think about that, but that's probably the best piece of advice, is just making sure that you have people around who are keeping you from doing stupid shit, like whether that's like violent or like jumping off things. Like as a kid, I was jumping off things as a drunk. And crazy shit. I remember I would go downstairs on in a grocery cart. Like I just go downstairs. And like those are the kinds of things that are like terrible ideas, but they sound great when you're wasted.
Yes.
But later you're like, like I could have gotten really hurt at the time, right?
Oh, that's another thing. Ideas that sound great. If anyone ever like has like a construction idea, I mean, this might sound oddly specific, but like if they're like, hey, let's remodel your freaking, let's change out your sink faucet or something like that. You're gonna wake up in the morning with like a bunch of like nuts and bolts on your floor, and a sink you can no longer use, and you got to go like pee upstairs. And don't start any drunk projects unless maybe it's like finger painting or something like that. If you get any like, oh dude, the coolest, rip out the grass and like put it in a fountain. And especially that goes for drugs too. Like, don't start any projects when you're not in a clear head, please.
I've never even thought about that. That's a great piece of advice. Well, one of the ways I always end a show is I ask for life advice that's not covered so far that you would give my son or anybody in general that you think that's important,
I mean, life advice in general, I would say talk to older people. Even if that might seem dorky or whatever to your friends, but like sometimes just talk to someone who's older, because people who are older have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And whether they lived a good life or a bad life, you can learn something from anyone. I've actually learned more, I think, from people who like messed up their lives.
Yeah.
I call them reverse role models. Where you're like, I don't want to be like him, or I don't want to be like her. And it kind of comes back to my philosophy of, they say learn from your mistakes, but it's easier to learn from other people's mistakes. but yeah, I mean, I would say that talk to older people. I always do that. Like a lot of people my age like would think that's weird or like lame or whatever, but old people have a lot of experience, and sometimes they might be quiet or whatever, but you get them talking, and you'll find a lot of stuff that you didn't even think about. So
yeah, I love that. I love that. Talking to older people and talking to people who, what's it called? Reverse role models. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great.
I got lots of them. I can give you a list if you want to put them on the show, but I can't guarantee what they might say or not say.
Great thing, being able to fall forward, I think is an important skill. I think.
I'm sorry, the audio just cut out real quick.
Let me see.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, I was saying like having a reverse. Having like falling forward is what I call it. Is that like
okay.
Making sure that when you fall, that it's not just like you're totally knocked out, but you're able to move forward with it, and and the one thing I always tell my son is that if you make like so in jiu-jitsu, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, he could choose, like I always tell him, he could choose the people he knows he could beat, or he could choose the people that he knows he can't beat. And that choosing the people he knows how to beat doesn't help him at all. But it's choosing the people that he knows that he can't beat will make him better at the end of the day. And those are life choices, right? You could either
yes, yeah, like hang out with 9 people that you want to be like, because you're bound to be the 10th one.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? If you hang out with 9 bums, birds of a feather, all that. Yeah, definitely try to aim high. And even not just about what other people will perceive, but it just starts to influence you when they're talking about, oh hey, I'm buying my 4th house, or this other like, oh yeah, I chugged a 40 of old English 800, and yeah, I'm applying for welfare. Like you just kind of get influenced by the rhetoric, by the talk, by the people around you. So try to surround yourself with people that are at least trying to do something with their life.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for coming on.
Thank you, Koji-san, and thank you for having me on here. And hopefully, I didn't burn my bridge.
Oh no, I'd love to have you for other things in the future as well. So think about what kind of advice you want to give.
Yeah, for sure. Just let me know.
All right. Well, I'm gonna so before I forget, everybody, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Please find us on social media. We're Guy Code Pod, I think, on most Facebook and Instagram. And please tell a friend or an enemy, and have a really great night.